Welcome back to another edition of Tulgey Wood TV, Digging the Details. I'm Dean, and this is Jim.
And I'm Jim, and that's Dean.
That's right.
There will be a quiz.
Take notes. We're here to talk to you today about our experience at the D23 fan event of 2024 that just happened this last weekend for us, and some of the things that we saw.
And obviously, Dean is here in California so that he could attend it, and I'm in California too. So
this is my first time at one of these. I've been to some D23 events in the past, but not this scale before. So this was a great experience for me, and I'm excited to share some of the things that I got to see. And
did you have a favorite part?
I did. I had a lot of favorite parts.
That's a good answer.
Which are hard to nail down, but one of the highlights of the trip was certainly the panel that you put on, Jim. You were invited to do a panel on the Walt Disney Studio and the history of that. How was that for you to prepare and to actually execute in front of this audience?
Well, the bulk of the presentation was the many photos, the historic photos, that almost all of them came from the Disney Photo Library. And they're all in beautiful shape. So it was wonderful looking through all that and deciding what to show. And we had many photos of the construction of the studio, which happened in 1939, basically, and the move to the studio. We're talking the studio in Burbank, the present-day studio. It's still there. They're still using the exact same lot.
Still a living, breathing studio.
Yeah, so the construction was very well documented, which wouldn't necessarily be the case. So it's wonderful to have all those historic photos. And then, I just tried to show different parts of the lot, some of the, the sound stages, some of the filming of certain movies, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, for which Stage 3 was built, and with the water tank and everything. And it was just great fun, as usual, looking through all the many different photos. So, and then, because I really I've done quite a few presentations, and I love putting them together. It's great fun.
It is, and you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
This was the first time I was able to sit through one of your official panels, official presentations, and I enjoyed every minute of it. You did a great job, especially with the photos and everything. I don't know, there were a lot of construction photos, but I love seeing every single one of them. I don't know if that would be boring to the average person, but for me it was great getting to see everything in its pre-life, especially like the animation building and some of the other sites from the studio.
It was difficult to narrow them down, and I probably could have narrowed it down more.
Yeah.
But the audience seemed very engaged.
And you had a good turnout.
The presentation was at the Hyperion stage, and it seemed full. And everybody seemed to really be enjoying it.
Yeah.
Because, I'm always wondering if the audience is engaged. But from what I could tell, they were. They seemed to get everything I was saying. Some humorous remarks. There was always laughter. Mm-hmm. You could tell they were appreciating fun things, like the animation building being Medfield College and Kurt Russell pulling the cow up the steps.
Oh yeah,
and things like that. So, I think I could have sharpened the presentation a little bit and by eliminating more photos, but I went through the construction photos pretty quickly.
You did, yeah. I really liked how the audience reacted when you felt like you didn't have as much time to show one of the last video clips, and then at the end you finally decided, I'll just show it anyway since we have a couple minutes, and the audience was so excited. There was an audible sense of disappointment when you had to skip over it, but going back to that, I think that was a good move. Everyone seemed to really like seeing the progress report from Disneyland, so that was great.
Are you implying that I did it on purpose, that I said we didn't have time when I knew we really did?
Oh, the truth comes out, huh?
Yeah, no,
Good trick.
yeah, I really did think that there was not going to be enough time because it's an 11-minute clip. And if you've not seen that particular show, and a lot of people haven't, it's footage of many different opening day attractions being constructed at the Disney studio in preparation for Disneyland. And then there's a little bit at the end where they take everything on the freeway in trucks and transport it to Disneyland. All roads lead to Disneyland, as Winston Hibler said.
And it was fun seeing us come off the freeway to the presentation, to the event, and then seeing that exact same footage from, 1954, 55?
It was 1955, yeah.
Shortly before the opening, so
yep.
That was a neat, just boom experience for me, because I've seen the video footage before, but having that freshly, I've lived through that freshly in my mind, and then all of a sudden, here it is.
We just
in the archival footage, too. That was great.
Yeah, we had just driven there, like an hour before. And then I thought the same thing when I was watching it.
We took the same trip from Burbank to Anaheim, yeah.
Yes, the exact same trip. Because we drove by the studio to get on the freeway to go. So it was practically the same trip.
And we still have yet to show you some of the footage from our trip to Walt's office from last March. But getting to experience your presentation only a few months after experiencing Walt's office myself for the first time, that was a great tie-in, almost like a secondary event to that.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Getting to see the studio, and then all of a sudden, here's your presentation on it.
That's a really good point.
With all the history.
Because for you watching, part of the presentation was Walt's office. I thought it went really well.
Yes, I agree.
I thought the audience really responded, and they seemed engaged right up to the end. They were very enthusiastic, and some people told me afterwards how much they liked it. So I was very happy.
Me too. Great job, Jim.
Great. Thank you, Dean. I'm so glad that you were there.
I was very glad to be there. Very honored.
Great.
It was wonderful to get to see some other panels as well. One of the most notable was fairly soon after yours. It was a tribute to Richard M. Sherman, who has sadly passed away as of this year. And it was great to see many noted figures from Disney history, for fairly recent history, right? But some from that time, from Richard's life and Walt's life.
Yep.
So, names like Floyd Norman were there to share their memories and some of their favorite treasures from Richard. So, what was your favorite part of that?
Well, it was interesting because it was a tribute specifically to Richard Sherman.
Yes.
So, not Walt. So Leslie Ann Warren was there. She wasn't talking about Walt Disney. She was talking about Richard Sherman and how they interacted and how he helped.
Yes.
And of course everyone talked about how enthusiastic Richard was, his wonderful smile, his sense of humor, and of course his great creativity and musicianship.
Right.
So that was wonderful. Haley Mills did the same. It wasn't the story she's told so many times, delightfully so, about meeting Walt. It was about meeting Richard Sherman and Robert Sherman as well. So Haley was talking about that for, when she came to Hollywood. She'd already been to Hollywood to film Pollyanna, but the Shermans were not involved in that.
Yeah.
So when she came back to do The Parent Trap, she met them. Walt said, "I'd like you to meet these two special people." And then they explained to her that they had a song for her, and she was like, "Well, I can't sing." But
these two very attractive men are asking me to sing, and I don't sing.
Yes, right. Everything she's said, she's always been like this. Anytime you see her in an interview or anything, she tells everything with such a sparkle. It's that Haley Mills spark that she always has had and still does have. So she told everything so delightfully.
Oh yeah.
But they convinced her that she could sing, and she said that the Sherman brothers told her the same thing that they told Suzanne Plachette. That because Suzanne Plachette also told them she couldn't sing, and they had a song for her, and she said, you know, Suzanne Plachette at least said, I'm not a singer, I'm an actress. And they said, then you can act like you are a singer. And Suzanne Plachette said, oh, okay. And apparently it was pretty much the same with Haley, because she said the same thing. So she, of course, sang delightfully in the movie I'm talking about, Let's Get Together. And I had heard Richard Sherman say, when she objected, he said, you can carry a tune. In other words, you may not be the greatest singer, but you're not bad, you're not terrible, you can carry a tune. And I've always felt like, well, the character's not supposed to be a singer, and it's not a musical. So,
yeah,
you know, she's supposed to be just like a teenage girl that can play the guitar, heard the song on the radio and in the world of the movie, and liked the song and performed it with her twin.
And she mentioned that, I believe, she was sitting with Leslie Ann Warren and had basically said, you were in a musical, I was in a movie with songs.
Yes, that's right,
she made that distinction.
She did say that. Yes, because of course Leslie Ann Warren was into actual musicals,
yes,
where all the characters sang.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what The Parent Trap is.
Right.
It just happens to be like, you know, like real life. There's songs,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes, you know, you just kind of sing them.
Yeah.
Because you like them. So at any rate, she said to Leslie Ann Warren, well, you know, they wanted her to perform at this panel, Let's Get Together. And she said, well, I can't do it without a twin. So Leslie Ann Warren sang it with her.
She finally had her twin, so here we go. And they did a great job.
And it wasn't, it was her twin, and it wasn't her.
Yeah.
It wasn't starring Haley Mills and Haley Mills.
Susan and Sharon.
It was starring Haley Mills and Leslie Ann Warren. And actually, we had run into Howard Green earlier in the day.
Yeah.
He told us without prompting that the rehearsal the night before with Leslie Ann and Haley had gone so well. So we were already looking forward to it.
It was really cool to hear that, yeah.
And it was so great. It was so good.
It was great to meet Howard. I've never met him before.
Great. Yeah, he's such a wonderful person. But what were some of the other musical highlights from that show?
One of the more unexpected ones, at least for me, there were so many great moments, but Kevin Feige came out and shared some experiences they had making Iron Man 2, where they wanted a song for the movie that was supposed to be representative of the feeling of the 1964 World's Fair, but they wanted a song for the movie that felt like it could have been from 1964, or, you know, something along those lines. Not a parody, but a real song. So, did they say Bob Iger had suggested, contact Richard Sherman? I can't remember if he was the one, but he said, we can do that? Would he do that? You know, he had no idea. And this was before Disney had acquired Marvel.
Yeah.
So, that's crazy. But they got him, and they showed a little video clip of him getting with the cast, or not the cast, of presenting the song to the crew of Iron Man 2, including Jon Favreau. They all sat there and listened to him present this song, and they loved it. They were eating it up, and it was great to see their reactions.
They sure were.
And then Richard even played it again and said, this time I'm watching the cameraman. There's not going to be any mistakes, you know, apologizing all the way.
Right.
But he did such a good job, and that was a neat anecdote from recent Disney history that may not have always been readily shared. So that was great.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was wonderful. And they didn't want a parody. They wanted real optimism and real enthusiasm. And everyone always comments that that's who Richard was. He was so optimistic, so upbeat, so lively. I was very impressed that John Stamos, who was sort of the overall host, brought in Darren Criss, and John Stamos played the drums. Darren Criss played the guitar and sang "I Want to Be Like You." That was a great number.
Oh yeah.
For anybody that knows of Darren Criss, he's a phenomenal talent. So he just did just such a great job.
It was wonderful. It was really fun.
But speaking of John Stamos, he had this speech, as it were, at the beginning, because he knew Richard Sherman very well. They were good friends. And, you know, for those that don't know, John Stamos is a big Disney fan. And he gave this beautiful speech, and he said the Sherman songs are great, period. It is not about nostalgia. They are great songs in and of themselves, whether you love them as a child or didn't know them at all. And that's always my point. And in fact, that's my point about Disney in general. It's not about nostalgia.
Right.
If you loved something as a child, fantastic. That doesn't mean that's its only value. And you hear that a lot with Disney stuff. And I have often...
And Sherman stuff specifically.
Yes, and I have often, in writing about Disney, changed that. I said, it's not just about memories. It's not memories that makes this great. They are great in and of themselves, whether it be these songs or movies or any of the parks or anything like that. So I thought that was a fantastic point. And then at the end, Greg Sherman, Richard's son, spoke, and he said, I want you all to know that every word that John Stamos said at the beginning came from him. They were his own words. They were his own sentiments and emotions. And like everybody, there was quite a bit of emotion, but John Stamos, I was especially moved by how moved he was.
Oh, yeah. He held it together pretty well, but by the end, he was about to burst into tears.
Yeah. So that was wonderful. I think Greg must have decided he was going to say that as he was watching John Stamos. That was my feeling.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
And I was totally wondering, because when I heard John Stamos speak, I was saying to myself, oh, I wonder who wrote that for him. Because it was so beautifully done.
Yeah.
And then Greg said that was him. That was all John Stamos.
He's an excellent writer.
And
all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the main point. We have to remember that these things have a value beyond whether we knew them as a child or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe I've spoken about this several times on podcasts. Maybe it's because my own perspective. Certainly I saw all kinds of Disney things as a child, as we all do, I think. But there's many films that I did not see until I was an adult.
Yeah.
I never went to a Disney park until I was an adult. So I never looked at it. Like, I remember when I was 3 years old and I
wrote It's a Small World.
Yeah.
Even me, I went to the parks as a child, but I never did get to experience It's a Small World till I was a teenager. So I have a similar experience there, but I have not seen, even to this day, all of the Sherman Brothers composed films. So when I see those, that's not going to be nostalgia. It's going to be an experience that is just, it is what it is.
Yes, and it has a great value. So I was so impressed that he made that point.
That was a great point to make.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What else did we see?
Oh, we saw a lot. We went and toured the floor also for a little while, in addition to some more panels, and we got to see the wonderful car show put on by the Walt Disney Archives. It was a wonderful chance to see many vehicles from throughout all of the history of Disney, really. One of my favorites was the Disneyland vehicle that was a parade vehicle for Walt Disney, built by Bob Gurr, that you see him riding in a lot of photographs and even in some video. I really loved seeing that and getting my picture with it. And there was so many others too that blew me away, such as the Ford Mustang from the 1964 World's Fair exhibition that Ford put on. And that was so cool.
Because that model was introduced at the World's Fair.
Right.
And it looked absolutely brand new. It was incredible.
Very pristine. And they had it on a turntable, which was a nice effect.
Yes.
And I made the comment to you, I think, that I can't see that attraction anymore, so this is about as close as I'm going to get, which is a thrill for me. Seeing an extinct attraction as close as you can get. That's nothing better than that. It's priceless.
Well, I agree. It's the same for me. Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah. So, all around wonderful experience, and the floor, always a fun time getting to see all the different booths and the different things you can buy. So,
and speaking of Walt's cars, there was one car that actually was Walt's. He owned it, that I didn't even really notice right away, and you spotted it. You did spot it right away. What was that?
It was his 1964 Mercedes-Benz, and it was really cool to see that also it was used in That Darn Cat, which I didn't know. So that was really cool to see.
The famous story about that is Walt saw the Mercedes-Benz in a showroom window.
Really?
And he said to himself, yeah, he just happened to be passing it. And he said to himself, I wish I could afford a beautiful car like that. And then he said, wait a minute, I can. So he went and bought it right then and there. But then...
Only Walt Disney, I guess.
Right. And then only Walt Disney rented it back to the studio to use in That Darn Cat, so he got some of his money back.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very smart businessman.
Yes, and that's why you can see it in the movie.
One of the other panels we saw was put on by Kevin Schaefer, Eric Goldberg, and Mike Giamo of the restoration team working on the animation classics from, I believe they said, the beginning to 1950. So that was really cool to see all the work they've been putting into doing the projects of restoration there. And I really enjoyed seeing the comparisons, all the wonderful ways they're bringing back these classics to life, almost as if we're seeing them for the first time.
Yeah.
And you've been able to experience some of these films in full glory on a big screen here in Hollywood. How has that been for you, Jim, to sort of see the behind the scenes of some of that stuff?
Yeah, it's incredible. And Mike Giamo has told me some of the fascinating details. But I think what is very, very important for people to realize is that this is complete 100% authenticity. Both Mike Giamo and Eric Goldberg are passionately devoted to make these films, to restore them to look the way they were intended.
Right.
Not to brighten colors if the colors were not meant to be that bright.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, and I think it was Mike Giamo, said the main thing is for us to get out of our own way.
Oh, yeah.
To paraphrase, the project is not about them. It's about them finding out what the film is supposed to look like as intended by its makers. And the example they always give is Cinderella's beautiful gown as created by the fairy godmother. For some reason over the years it's become a blue. And Mike says certainly on merchandise it's often blue.
Yeah.
But in the film itself, they've started making when they're doing color adjustments and so forth, they have started to make it blue, and that's not authentic.
Right.
As he pointed out, it takes place in the garden in moonlight, and it's almost as if the gown is created from moonlight. So it's not blue; it's silver.
Uh-huh.
It's silver, and they showed some original cells, and they draw on all kinds of resources, not just the resources of Disney, for example, Animation Research Library, and those resources are incredible, but they also turn to Library of Congress, for example. And in both the case of Cinderella and Snow White, they had original prints from the original releases. So, and it's understanding what the Technicolor process was, the original Technicolor. Mm-hmm. It's understanding that there was actual silver, meaning the metal silver, in the film, and how the three colors of the Technicolor tricolor process are put together. All of that they felt they had to understand first to make this 100%
Yeah,
authentic.
that was a good point they made of taking the process, understanding how it affected the film in its original entirety, and going back to that, going back and making sure that things are corrected, like the color of Cinderella's dress. And it's gonna be, I think, a permanent damage in people's minds now that, yeah, she's got a blue dress, right? That's not original.
Right.
Certainly, you know, she looks fine in a blue dress, but that's just not, it's not original. It's
Right.
not authentic.
Right. The whole idea of this effort is to, and truly any restoration effort should be this.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if an individual thinks, oh, that color should be brighter. The question is, what was it originally? What was it intended to be? And he's talking about, you know, like the watercolor, because watercolor for a Snow White, the backgrounds, many of them. And I think Eric Goldberg said that, you know, the resolution of these new prints in the incredible high definition, where you can see the parchment of the paper, of the watercolor paper, that grain comes through.
Yeah.
So it's all about that. You would not remove that. You would not improve it.
To make it look more digital.
And Mike Giamo said it, and he often says things like this, that these artists were the top. They were the top artists in any field, and they were painting, speaking of the background painters, they were painting to get the effect that they wanted for the film.
Yeah.
So he said, when you watch Lady and the Tramp, you're thinking this is a very beautifully done but straightforward representation of these houses, let's say in Lady's neighborhood, with very straight, you know, defined lines. But he said when you actually look at the original backgrounds with a magnifying glass, he said it's loose.
Mm-hmm.
They are using the colors, placing the colors to get that effect.
Right.
It's kind of the opposite, frankly, of computer-generated stuff.
Absolutely. And I think it was really cool that they...
I'm saying that they didn't.
Right. It's cool that they made that extreme distinction, too, that they're trying not to alter it in any way, just to
Right.
enhance the originality. Even if there are some rough edges here or there, they're trying to not go over and reanimate the film. That was a cool way they said it. And
the incredible thing about having, to interrupt myself, Kevin Schaefer is the head of the restoration department, as it were. Mike Giamo and Eric Goldberg are on the team. But the incredible thing about having Mike and Aaron on that team is that they themselves are filmmakers. They themselves are animators. They themselves are artists and painters. So they know all this.
Mm-hmm. So they have that knowledge and direct experience to draw off
Right.
of. Exactly.
And both of them, and in my own experience, I will say, at least, both of them, but especially Mike Giamo, are so well versed in what Disney is,
Mm-hmm.
that they are the prime people you would want involved in something like this.
Right.
And Mike Giamo is a perfectionist and will settle for nothing less than the best it absolutely can be and must be.
An absolute expert in his field, too.
Yes, absolutely. So it's incredible, everyone. It's just incredible to have these folks involved in something like this.
Oh, yes. Grateful they are. There was also a panel put on by Stacia Martin about Disney records, which is something she's extremely passionate about.
Yes.
And it was neat to see her, some of the things that she's found, I don't know if I'd say recently, but presented to us in a form that hadn't really been seen before.
Yeah.
Lots of new content that was fairly rare and somewhat eccentric, but very, very, very interesting to Disney historians and aficionados.
And extremely entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Stacia has a great knowledge of Disney, but her passion is Disney music and Disney records. And there are other great authorities on Disney records, like Bill Morgan, for example. But Stacia, I think, is probably the top authority on this subject.
I believe it.
She was deliberately finding obscure things to present. And I know one thing you had really picked up on was the Ice Capades.
Yeah. They always talk about Disney's involvement with them, especially the fact that they lent costumes to Disneyland on the opening day. But I didn't really know there were so many record albums made to tie in with the Ice Capade shows. I guess it's obvious, but sometimes you don't always go down thought paths of, oh yeah, I wonder what album was released along with that, or...
I'm not sure how obvious it is, though, really.
Yeah.
It was not obvious to me. I don't think I knew that until yesterday when I saw her presentation.
So it was neat to see and hear some of them. That's something huge I took away that I'll be investigating and researching myself now.
Really, really quite extraordinary.
And something we both enjoyed were the radio spots that were shared also from various films. Some of our extreme favorites.
Yes, like Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Mm-hmm.
And then most people have never heard of anything like this, but certainly from at least as far back as Mary Poppins, but probably even farther back than that, the Disney publicity department would prepare recorded interviews with the stars, and they were meant to be distributed to radio stations. So they could play these little interviews. They could incorporate them into their news programs if they wanted, or they could just play them as some sort of a little entertainment.
Right.
Interstitials almost.
Yeah.
But we heard from a re-release of Sleeping Beauty, we heard an interview with wonderful Mary Costa.
That was great.
An interview with both Dick Van Dyke and Edward G. Robinson.
That was also fantastic. And the final panel we got to see of the day was by Kevin Kern and Stephen Vagnini of the Walt Disney Archives. And they presented a panel that was called Down the Rabbit Hole, talking about some of the lesser-known Disney facts that most people will assume, I know a lot about Disney, but they proved us all wrong.
And much of it was not only lesser known, it was bizarre.
Yes, extremely bizarre. There were so many. I wish that I was able to keep a mental copy of all of the things they shared with us.
Their presentation was extremely fast-paced.
Yes, that too.
And very funny.
Very good.
And all the slides they were showing were the transitions were amazing, very creative, and they had a little section on the orange bird.
Some of the wonderful mascots through the years of various organizations and things, including a Marvel character named Captain Citrus, just off the wall sorts of things that I hope will come back to my memory as I'm sitting and stewing about it here in the next few days. But yeah, it was great.
Right.
I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it was so fascinating and funny, and so fast paced that you couldn't even really keep up with it.
Yeah,
you would no sooner hear one thing that you could not believe, and then they were on to something else even more amazing.
And they had a great chemistry working off of each other, presenting lots of great puns and jokes, and
it was very funny and very entertaining.
Oh yeah, they did a great job. Overall, the D23 Ultimate Fan event of this year was a wonderful experience and something I was glad to be able to attend. I really hope to be able to go to them in the future.
Yes, and oh my gosh, the whole thing was just an amazing experience. We only went for one day.
Right.
So what we're talking about all happened on Sunday, which was yesterday as we're filming this. We're just scratching the surface here. So if you've never been, plan on going to the next one, which will be they do them every other year, so that'll be in 2 years.
Yeah.
But if you have a chance to go to any of the other Destination D23 mini expos, I guess you could say, here and there, definitely grab that chance if you can.
There's a lot of wonderful, I would say, mainstream announcements, like the new movies and new theme park attractions that we didn't even really get to see much of.
No, we did not.
But there's also just, I don't know, I kind of consider it like the underbelly of the historical side, where you can go up and hear some of the panels we got to see that often kind of gets overlooked. So if you're one of those people that has kind of overlooked some of these wonderful historical presentations, come check them out. They're worth it, and they're very fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
As did I. It was a wonderful experience, and especially to experience it with you, Dean. It was really, really great to see all these wonderful historical perspectives and the different materials that were presented. You know, photos, clips, audio, everything.
Wonderful experience that I'm glad to have shared with you as well, Jim. So thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
We've been Dean and Jim on Tulgey Wood TV, and of course he's Jim.
And he's Dean.
We'll see you next time in Digging the Details.